Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the CM Mentors podcast. My name is Matt Graves. My co-host each week is Kyle Grandell. What's up, Kyle?
Hey, Matt, thanks for the welcome and thanks for tuning in, everybody. Looking forward to another good session here. We got a great guest. I'm excited to talk with John here and see how this goes. So let's do it.
Yeah, so CM Mentors podcast, we bring on some industry-leading professionals to kind of help us mentor the next generation of construction professionals. And this week we've got a cool guest. I met him just recently, and he kind of explained what he's doing. I was like, man, well, I got to get you on the podcast and kind of share the world with what you got going on. So this week's guest is John Farner. What's going on, John?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks, guys. I appreciate y'all having me on.
So John is the founder of Empowering Subcontractors, which John was a GC. Let him give a bio in a second. But John was a GC basically his whole career, and now he's seen a lot of stuff ways subcontractors can do their job better, and from the GC's perspective. And I think, at least me personally, I came from the subcontractor world before I came to the owner's rep side, and Kyle was a subcontractor as well too. So I think this will be a fun conversation. And I do got to say, Kyle, it's took me enough weeks, but I finally have my mug with me.
Oh, man, you outdid me today. I just got a Caribou coffee mug.
And this is the stupid mug that you sent me.
The special edition, everybody. If you can see this, you got to tune in. And Matt, I'd like you to read that for our listening.
I can't read it. It's backwards on my screen, but I think it says.
It's actually not, by the way.
Electricians are my favorite trade. So
you heard that here, folks.
So John, I came from a bunch of different trades, and Kyle's an electrician by trade. So anyway, I always give him grief about being an electrician. So before we get started, I guess I'll have to ask you, John, what's your favorite trade?
My favorite trade. I'm a big concrete guy.
There you go.
Yeah, I like the concrete work. That was always the one that I found got the most interest in. You can see, and part of it is you can see the progress, move along so fast. And, you poured that wall today and these columns tomorrow and a slab and up you go. And so, yeah, it's always my most exciting part.
No, you can definitely see progress fast because, I came from mechanical and plumbing before, and Kyle's electrician, and it's just like for weeks and months, you're just racking pipe and pulling conduit. And it's like, when's this ever going to end? Like, nothing ever changes, doesn't feel like.
Yeah, and from a general contractor's perspective, it's like there's an empty conduit there. Why is that empty when the rest of it? Well, that's just a spare one. And then you come back 2 weeks later, and it's like, it wasn't a spare one because it's got wire in it now.
Well, and John, I just have to say I can totally see your perspective to it. And at least from my thoughts are the concrete world is, I'm going to say that the least understood, it seems like. And people don't understand what really goes into that. Unless they've had to do it themselves and work closely with those that do. So I can definitely appreciate your side of that thing.
Yeah.
Electricians are still better, but
You heard what he said about the conduit. It's always a spare till you're like, wait a second. Like, oh yeah.
Well, there's a term for that. We actually call it show conduit. So you just basically start throwing conduit in the air so that when the owner walks around the site, they see progress and like, we'll get to that wire pole later. Don't worry about it; it'll be full.
Yeah, and then you can bill out 90% because you got a whole bunch of stuff hanging up.
Right.
So this episode is live streaming on YouTube. So for the guests that are on YouTube, feel free to ask questions, put it in the chat box, and we'll make it fun and entertaining. So John, why don't you give us a little bit of your background and bio for everybody who doesn't know you?
Yeah, sure enough. So my mom and dad, I grew up in a family-owned subcontracting business, which is why I have probably more empathy for subcontractors than you might find from a lot of other project managers, general contractors. But and so I remember all of that tug of war between, my mom and dad having these, the cash flow things, and you think you're doing really well on a project, and then the insurance bills come in, and as from running your own company, Kyle, that it's like, And so the more you work, the more you got to pay for that, and it's like, wait, the more I work, it should be, but it doesn't work that way. And so, working as a general contractor and getting out of school and starting in 1985 in Nashville, in that market, I got the chance to do a lot of great projects and work with a lot of great subcontractors. And over the years, I found that the subcontractor struggle normally isn't in the field work. They've got to be successful in the field work, or they don't get, you don't get any work. But the paperwork side of it, the coordination side, the project management side, procurement side is always seems to be somewhat of a struggle for most of the subcontractors. And so um, as I as I got later in my career and started trying to think about what I want the last 20 years to look like, I thought I wanted to give something back, and so I created this course to try to help. And again, if you raise the bar, the subcontractors, the general contractors have to raise their bar, and everybody's, all three owners, all the stakeholders are benefiting.
I love it because I think we talked about this last time we talked, John. But coming when you're the subcontractor, you kind of got your blinders on, right? I'm kind of worried about my budget, my labor, my material, my thing, my. You're kind of worried about that. And you can lose sight of the bigger picture. And it was kind of really eye opening when I kind of left subcontractor world to come to the owner's rep side, because I've never worked for a general contractor, but I've been subcontractor looking up at them, and now owner's rep kind of looking down at them. So I've kind of seen the whole thing, but it's opened up a whole new perspective for me of just seeing the big picture of the project and how all the pieces come together, which when you're in the sub world, you're really kind of tunnel visioned, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes the communication part of it so important, because if the general contractor is not communicating clearly to the subcontractors what he's got planned, then you've got a bunch of individual plans working on what's supposed to be a big plan, but nobody's fitting in the puzzle. Everybody's trying to fit their pieces in before the rest of it's built, and it just doesn't work that way.
So, John, you talked about struggle just a minute ago, and then just now you're also talking about some communication type issues or areas for improvement, I guess is the right term nowadays. But in your experience, have you seen a difference between working with larger GCs versus working with smaller outfits, at least in that regard for people coming on board, coming into the industry, maybe what to expect as they get into these projects?
Yeah. So my experience has always been with a medium-sized general contractor, but I've competed against a lot of the larger contractors, and the feedback that I've always gotten is that with the large general contractors, you have more staff from the general contractor side, which means the more staff you have more involved, versus in a medium-sized, smaller contractor, which could be doing the same $70-80 million job, but you've got less staff. So there's a more of a control issue, I think, with the smaller, medium-sized general contractor than possibly with the management staff on the other contractor, because they've all kind of got their, you've got a guy that's in charge of East Wing or in charge of the finishes, or the young guy that's just got the hardware portion of it, versus you've got a project manager with a medium-sized contractor. He's got all of it, and he's the orchestrator on all of it instead of a project executive type level. I think that's one of the biggest differences.
Yeah, very interesting. I can definitely agree with that, with what I've seen too, because I've been on projects where I would say the division of responsibilities is kind of the key driver, right? Whereas, you're saying, if they have enough resources to support, trade-specific expertise, or maybe they have assistant supers that are, supporting a certain trade or whatever, kind of dividing up the workload, that those typically do seem to run a little smoother, at least from a communication standpoint.
Yeah, right. And now with all the project management software that's out there, there's so much reliant on the fact that everybody sends something out in, through the project management software notification, and the subcontractors are getting notified on just everything, it seems like, and from this job and this job and this job, and I think they lose track of some of it, and so I think that's kind of, as great as it is, and I'm a big advocate of project management software, there's just a balance between that, especially going to the subcontractor level, of them not going, oh, it's just another email from X project management software company, and here's another one. Oops, I missed the one I should have read, And so I think trying to make sure that communication on the job site is happening is a big key as well.
Well, so I've been really geeking out on PM software recently as our company's growing and we're getting more lean and getting our processes down. What are some of your favorite software packages or suites that you've used?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked, because the company that I just left, we had just purchased Procore, which is the big dog in the thing, and it's got so many great features. And again, you look at some of the stuff that Build Suite's got out, some of the stuff that LevelSoft's got out. They're all kind of do the same thing, and they all can be so robust. And the more you use, the more integrated it is. So to me, you've got to look at what your budget is. You've got to look at really how the billing is. Is it, your billing? Is it volume? What's it based on? And really make decisions based on that as much as, because now they all get more advanced to where, you can pull down drawings, you can mark RFIs and send them in, and those probably to me are the best features. They all can distribute contracts. If you wanted to do budget, if you wanted to do billing, again, they all kind of perform the same thing. So to me, it comes down to which one do you like the graphics better, and which one do you want to pay for the most.
I've gone down a deep rabbit hole of construction softwares and construction technology in the last probably 6, 9, 12 months as well. Have you, most of them, like we use Procore at work now, and I've used Procore probably for the last 8, 9 years. It's been for a while as a subcontractor, and then we switched over to something else, and then now with the owner's rep side. Procore is it's a one-size-fits-all package, right? So there's a whole bunch of bells and whistles that doesn't apply, especially if you're a subcontractor, because they want everybody there. They want everybody from the owner, the architect, the engineers, the GC, the subs, the vendors, the blah, you name it. They want everybody in there and all using it. So it's built for everybody. But have you seen one that's really good, tailored for subcontractors that can really help manage a subcontractor's kind of document control and maybe labor and materials and really track all that very well? Most of those guys I see use spreadsheets. So
sure. The one that I've been looking at is one field site. I believe that's the one that I was looking at, and it seems to be a lot more field oriented and has some more specific modules for subcontracting, for specialty trades is the way they reference it, and so it seems like it's got more of a focus on that level to help them communicate. But the electrical subcontractors and mechanical HVAC contractors specifically, I think there are some software packages, Kyle, you correct me if I'm wrong, that are even more trade specific for that. I know in our region, a lot of the electrical contractors use, for example, the same pricing program on all of their change orders they use, and I don't know the name of that, but all of their change orders come in the same format. And so it's like, okay, everybody's got the same thing. So I could argue with each one of them about their price because I knew what format it was going to be in.
That's funny. So you want to tell us a little bit about empowering subcontractors? And it's like a 12-module course, right?
Yeah. So it's a master course, 12 modules, and I actually I did a little bit of studying on the adult learning methods now that's more out there, and so it's got each module has 5 to 6 videos, little short videos that I did, and then I've got resources, training guides, some reading resources, exercises. Then at the end of each module is a quiz. You got to pass the quiz before you go to the next module. Kind of format. If you've done the Procore training, it's similar in that type of thought process. So the ideal being, and I read this the other day. It said that to empower a subcontractor is giving them the tools, the resources, and stuff they need, and where that's a true statement, the company has to be strong. If you're going to grow a subcontract, you've got to have a good foundation. So I start with the ideal of what the values and the culture is of the company. And then the ideal is to bring each person in the company that goes through the course through the big picture of being a subcontractor or being a business, in fact. Business planning, estimating, budgeting, cost all work together. I go into some scheduling, and then more specific into general contracting, how you as a sub and your subcontract are meshed together, and being sure that you understand what you're signing up for as a subcontractor. The way the general contractor puts a bid package out, what their thought process is, and all the way into billing, and then just some the last module, which is probably my favorite one, is one that just talks about being set apart, not only as a company, but being set apart as an individual. And if you get a bunch of people in your company that are, looking at themselves in the mirror and trying to be better each day, you're going to have a great company. So I think it all meshes together and blends up really well.
For those listening, if you go to empoweringsubcontractors.com, he's got all 12 modules. I'm looking on the screen here. He's got all 12 modules listed out with a little paragraph of each one. It's honestly, I haven't gone through the course, but it's a pretty cool program. It looks like. He touches on it all.
Yeah, which makes it a little bit hard to market, because it's like when you talk to marketing, like, what pain point do you solve? Everyone I can think of.
I solved the pain of being a subcontractor, which is a bunch.
yeah, exactly. I think when it's funny, because I had a project, and I had a roofer that we'd hired to do the job, and they were recommended by the architect, and so it kind of the architect got involved, the owner got involved, and I was like, I just don't think they're qualified or big enough to do the job. And sure enough, they were struggling getting the project done. And so we had, a job meeting, met with them, and we had this great plan of action. And, I had the sub on board. He was going to bring all his people out there that he had in the company for 1 week and get the project caught up. And sure enough, I had one of my own superintendents go, well, that's all good, but we've only got like 40 more days before the job's going to be done unless we work Saturday and Sunday. And you could just see the whole, I have 12 subcontractors in there. Everybody's and the air just goes, it just drops out, and so it's like, so good subcontractors, try to help them get through stuff like that, so they know what they've signed up for was a big part of this course.
What do you think oh, go ahead.
John, would you say that there's, a certain, maybe a couple big problems that you were trying to address these modules as far as getting the subcontractors empowered? We talked a little bit about communication already. I know that's a big one. That's an heavy site. So, is there anything specific to subs that you were really trying to get on with these?
Yeah, I think if you had to boil it down, one of the big themes I think that comes through is the subcontractors' documentation and the importance to the subcontractor to do their own documentation. Whether it's and a good example is your crew's been instructed to go. You're going to start framing on the east wing, next Thursday, and so everybody's all planning on that. Subcontractor shows up to go frame, and they're not finished running the ductwork or the fire protection piping, and he can't get in to make any headway or any progress. And so, he talks to the general contractor, okay, I'll come back Monday. Really comes back Monday, and so it's a slow start, but he doesn't document that. And so, fast forward a month down the road, and he's like behind, and the general contractor's, me, I'm screaming at him for being behind, and he doesn't have anything. Well, I was here, but to start, and I lost, half a week, and then I had to, and the general contractor's like, I don't even remember that, and so, now the subcontractors have to, put up the overtime, bring in more people or more equipment and stuff, and it's costing him money that, in one sense, isn't fair to him had he documented, or at least if he had documented it, even if there wasn't any additional money involved in it, it would have got him some, goodwill, to push back a little bit and say, hey, we're going to get it done, but remember, and so I think those are, that's just one little part of it. But that one little part could grow into a big, big deal. And you don't know it's going to be a big deal until it's way down the road. And so it's, if you can learn to do that, if they're the field guy, the project manager, just in those simple examples, your documentation on change orders, the documentation on stored materials, writing your scope of works with your bid proposals so that it's clear, and then how does that translate to the contract? A bunch of stuff like that is covered in the program. That I think all of those are places that subcontractors either have increased scope, or they get scope added to them in the field, and they don't have any real resources to recover any of those costs. So I think
That's
those are
great.
big.
I really admire that, John. That's something that whenever I see that on projects, it just kind of just breaks my spirit, because
Yeah.
it's somebody that their work and their bottom line, and especially as a business owner, I really appreciate this now.
Yeah.
Their bottom line's getting affected because of somebody else's planning problems.
Right.
And,
Right.
and from the GC side, I'm going to say that most of the time they don't mean to be passing the buck, and they don't mean
Right.
to be the way that they are. But there's so many things going on that their heads spin trying to coordinate every single thing that happens during the day. And so, like you said, a week later, they've already forgotten the conversation and forgotten what happened. So they're not necessarily trying to be that way, but it comes across that way, and it ends up affecting the subcontractors and their livelihood. Because, like you said, now they have to, at their own expense, because maybe it was a lump sum bid, they have to bring in additional manpower. If they start working nights, get those off shift differentials that they're having to eat. So I really like that part.
Yeah, and the other thing, I kind of tell a little story in the program about this. If I've had subcontractors, kind of make a deal with another subcontractor to borrow their lift, and then come in on the weekend, and they borrowed 3 lifts for the weekend, and were able to, they paid overtime, but they didn't have any, their equipment cost was down to nothing on it. So, just to make deals like that on the job site, to be a good team player, all those things are important. Attitude from a subcontractor, their whole ideal of their responsibility on the coordination side of it versus the general contractor side. I think it just goes into a lot of good content to be able to broaden their perspective in the view of the job and the view of the role that they have. And I think overall, again, that's going to help them be more productive. And I use the term the preferred subcontractor because if you, as a general contractor, in fact, there's one pretty good little video out on YouTube where general contractors given the explanation of what makes a good subcontractor, and he said it boils down to making me look good. And true, but the things that you got to do to make that general contractor look good also benefits you. And when you do that, you will become, the guy that I want to call to come do my next job. Just as you're doing right now, you're taking the night shift to be the guy that they call back again.
We've talked about that on previous episodes, but it's funny. Like, it's very rarely does, or never, I've never seen it, where one subcontractor basically wins and makes a bunch of money on the project, and the GC loses and all the other subs lose. It's kind of an all or nothing thing. Like, you're all signed up, you're all doing this one thing together, and if it goes south, everyone's losing or everyone can win. So you got to be a team player with everybody. Yeah. But going back to your point about documentation, it's I'll preface this by saying it's so important. Like, it's so important, and 99% of the time, it'll never matter until that one time you need it to matter, and it saves you from a lawsuit or something, right? Like, but it's also, there's also a fine line there too, because you want to document enough, but you also don't want to be the subcontractor that's annoying the GC by sending a formal letter every time the wind changes directions, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a fine line of building that relationship and communicating and documenting, but also not wearing them out and just being a pain in their ass the whole time too. So
exactly. And that comes with experience. It also comes with developing the trust factor with the general contractor, the project manager and superintendent that you're working with. And what makes this business so weird, for lack of better terms, is you can work with subcontractor A and have a great, just a great project, and work with subcontractor A and have a different superintendent or foreman, and it not go so well. And the same thing from the subcontractor standpoint. You can work with general contractor A and it goes great. You work with them again, you got a different superintendent, that's a fly off the handle type superintendent, and the personalities don't match. And it's just complete conflict all the time. And so that's what makes it kind of strange, and the importance of those soft skills, they can't be overstated. And we're an industry that really doesn't do a lot of work on soft skills. If you can drop an L, drive it, hit it harder, it'll go faster.
It's getting better than I think it did whenever I first came into the industry, but I think there's still a long ways to go. I think especially in the subcontractor world, because a lot of times too, it's guys who come from the trades, right? They didn't come, they learned how to install pipe or pull wire, and they got more done by yelling louder sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because I've seen so many subcontractors that have started their business. They were working with somebody and they were really, really skilled, but they couldn't get along with people. So they started their own business and they still can't get along with people. Do great work, but can't get along with anybody. So you work for yourself. And so unfortunately, it does go that way.
We kind of through all this and through being a general contractor, maybe something you already touched on, but what do you think the most difficult thing it is for a to learn as a subcontractor, or like maybe the biggest thing you kind of keep seeing over and over and over that they keep screwing up, they just can't learn?
Yeah,
I think it's why does everybody hate the electricians? That's the answer.
Well, you never finish until the electrician's finished.
hey, you know what? We're always last. Nobody gives us any time, and they expect us to pull a miracle. We pull the rabbit out of the hat so many times. Sometime that rabbit's going to be dead. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I think I had one job where the mason the electrician finished before the mason did, so which was odd. But no, I think as odd as this is going to sound, I would say some of the biggest struggles really are with the pay requests. I've tried to make those as simple as I can with my subcontractors, but undoubtedly you'll get, you'll get them that's got 3 line items on when you needed 12, and you'll get the ones where you had 3 pages and you're like,
They're billing for every nut and bolt along the way.
Yeah, exactly. And so you're like, and then I think from subcontractor standpoint, learning how to use your mobilization submittal type line items in your pay application to help you on the front end of a job is also a skill. Because, all of a sudden they're starting out in the hole. If you've not kind of managed some of that front end stuff correctly on your pay application, but keeping, then there's the pay application process of getting it sent in and approved. Then it's the follow up on the things that keep that pay application from actually being a check handed to you, such as certificate of insurance is not being kept up to date. Most general contractors have got somebody that's checking that for risk management purposes. The bond's not been turned in, the subcontract's not been turned back in. Different things like that all impact that pay application process. So I think those are some of the places that be more consistent struggle.
Well, that's another really good point too, and it kind of go back to the documentation thing here, Matt. As a subcontractor, depending on how the contract is structured too, you have certain documents you got to turn in for backup just to even get your payment to go through the door. For example, I've been on larger projects where the owner has a open book policy, which means the GCs basically share an open book on everything, where all the cost is, where all the markup is, and so what that means is more paperwork, more backup. Every single penny is accounted for in some way. Right. Hell, we had a project where every month we were getting 250 pages of backup to support a single SOV document for a pay app. And it's like, oh my God, we had to hire a cost controller just to go through that stuff because I didn't have time to do it. Right.
Can you find one of those people on Fiverr to do
that? They'll say they can. Yeah. So same thing. I don't know how many, just over the course of my time, I've turned back some pay applications because, they're billing for offsite material or something, which the contract may allow them to do, but they have to have photos, they have to have, information on their bonded warehouse and all this stuff. And month after month, they submit it. I'm like, okay, I need photos. Like, oh crap, we'll get them. Like, we talked about this last month.
Right. And I think some of that stuff, like if it's a deposit, you've got to pay the deposit on an elevator. You just don't get. You can argue about the deposit on the floor. You can argue about the deposit on lots of things. Elevators, as a general contractor, you're not going to win because they won't order the elevator. I mean, it's pretty simple. You know,
And there's only go to the next guy and he'll ask for deposit too. Go to the next guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They may be, Kyle, you may be off the hook. They may be the most hated trade in the industry.
Hey, no, don't take that away from me.
That's funny.
Hey, Matt, didn't we talk about elevators in a previous podcast?
We did. And actually, we need to get an elevator guy on here. I got a guy, Chris Gutkeys. I've mentioned him on every podcast, and I got to get him on here.
At the same time, or let me know because I'm gonna like to send chat questions.
I'll get you the audience link for that one.
Yeah.
So speaking of kind of billing for mobilization and upfront costs and those sort of things, as a general contractor, how much would you typically allow? Because obviously you don't want them to get 50% billed on mobilization.
Right.
So how much is there a percentage threshold you would feel comfortable with?
Yeah, and it depends on the trade, really. Your mechanical plumbing, you're going to look for that to be a little bit higher than probably your flooring guy or your ceiling guy, right? But even your acoustical ceiling guy, if he's got $5,000-6,000 worth in there of, getting a scaffold ready and getting stuff like that, and I'm thinking it's, somewhere around $100,000, $80,000, $90,000 contract. I'm not going to worry about that, and a couple $1,000 for submittals, and that doesn't sound like much, but then he's got his bond broke out separate as well, so he's got that upfront cost. But at least that gives him something to feel like, okay, I'm not completely starting because he's going to show up with a 4-man crew, that's, his first 2 weeks worth of cost on the job site as well.
If you've never worked for a subcontractor, you kind of don't understand what all it takes to get a project up and running too. Because you do. I mean, it can take you months to kind of become cash positive, and sometimes you're chasing all the way to the end just based on the project and how your material hits and all that sort of stuff. So it can be tough.
Yeah, and you put on top of that that pay application, because that certificate of insurance was going to expire in 2 weeks before the check was written, doesn't get written, and you don't get notified by the general contractor, and you're like, what happened? And then your insurance guy's gone on vacation, so all of a sudden you're strung out for 4 more weeks, and unfortunately that does happen, and it happens a little too often.
Well, I've seen it a lot on projects too, where that first month, maybe even the first 2 months, depending on how things are going, comes in, and sure enough, the percent complete isn't in the field isn't quite what they're charging, but you also got to understand they got materials to order, and especially the last couple of years with the pandemic and the supply chain issues we've had, it's better off to order more right now and make sure you have it rather than trying to deal with getting it off a shelf somewhere that's in some other state that may or may not even have it stocked.
Yeah, exactly.
It's there's different rules too. I mean, the private world is obviously more of a free for all, but when you get in the public space, there's a lot of rules on what you can bill for, what you can't bill for. It's got to be on the job site, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. Just based on the different entities and different laws out there. So it's, I guess, as a subcontractor, you better know if it's a public project, private project, and kind of adjust your game plan accordingly.
Right, exactly. And the deposit's a big question on that. Usually in the public jobs, the university work that I've done, they're not going to pay you for a deposit. So you can't turn anything in that has the word deposit on it. Even the elevator ain't expecting to get paid. So, you're going to, as a general contractor, you're going to be out that money up front. So you've got to figure that out, as you're going in as well. And if you're the subcontractor that needs the deposit, you got to figure that out as well.
Well, and kind of to that point, I would think that it's really important to pick your partnerships wisely as well. Which GCs you partner with and do a lot of work with, because they're either going to support you and go to bat for you, or they're going to say, hey, tough love here, you sign the contract and now get the job done, and you're going to have to front load this project yourself and figure it out.
Right. You're exactly right. And one of the things that concerns me from talking with several subs is the general contractors, it's kind of changing because there is so much work that, I remember when I got thrown into my first project, right? My first project was an amusement ride at the old Opryland Park. It's not there anymore. There's a mall there, but it was doing foundation. So it was really only about 5-6 trades involved. versus now, some of the younger project managers with very limited experience are getting put into some positions with some pretty major size projects, with full scope trades, and they don't have the experience, to know how to, okay, how do you massage that a little bit to be sure that you're going to bat for your subs is a really good way to look at it, because they don't have the experience yet to know how bad they're going to need those subs to pull them out of the fire at some point in time. And so you need to help while you can, because you're going to need it on the backside.
Let's flip the script a second. We've been talking a lot about how subcontractors can do better. What can a general contractor do to be better, or even an owner's rep, or whoever, anybody sort of, I guess, above the subcontractor in the hierarchy? What can they do better to be more empathetic for subs and kind of help work with them?
I think it goes back to the project planning when it comes down to it. I think the best thing the GC can do is spend the time early in the job bringing his key subcontractors in and letting them know what the big picture is, and then really trying to stay somewhat close to your initial schedule, to your baseline schedule. Obviously, it's going to fluctuate some, but trying to keep at least the same sequence of work, if it's continuing to make sense, that is. But then when you're getting close to building dry-in, for example, you're ready to start the drywall guy, have those mini meetings that have got those 3 or 4 subcontractors that are all involved in the exterior skin and getting the building dried in. Have those meetings early enough to talk about the details, who's going to go first, who's got what flashing, and make sure all that's worked out up front before you've got 3 trades on site and all of a sudden you had that flashing that tied the ethos into the windows. And everybody's like, no, I excluded it. And then there's a delay in work that's going to impact 3 trades and the general contractor. So I think from general and I've, as the director of operations, I really, really stressed this a lot, was have those meetings. Everybody, you can do them Zoom, and, depending on if contractors are all out of the region, it makes sense, but make sure that you have a good agenda. Make sure you have, the stuff you can look at from the drawing standpoint, whether it's shop drawings, and get into that detail. I used to have a saying that I'm not going to be the smartest guy in the room when it comes to the glass, the drywall, the ethos, and all. That's why I've hired subcontractors. They're the experts. But when I understand what the plan is and how we're going to do it, then everybody's going to understand. And if everybody understands, then we're going to kind of execute in a really efficient manner, and that's been true project after project.
I love that.
Yeah, that's really great. You're bringing in a lot of stuff there that, I mean, to me, the first place I go to is lean construction. So having those meetings, those phase planning meetings, having those discussions, those daily huddles, our look ahead meetings, looking forward, and always keeping everybody in the loop too. The collaborative part is so important on these projects, especially nowadays, because they are complex. I mean,
yes, they are.
And it's only gotten more complex because, as you said, John, it's almost like there's even more sections of subs that are being brought in because everybody has different specialities on things.
Right, exactly. One of my favorite superintendents, general contractor superintendents that I've worked with, he'd be at the job like at 5 a.m., 5:30 in the morning, and he would walk the job, and this was a pretty good sized job, but he would walk it with a notepad and make notes of what progress everybody had done. When subcontractor came in and said, "No, I've got that finished," I mean, no, it's not finished. He knew exactly where everybody was, and when he had his huddle meeting that morning, and he would do a couple of trades together, and then maybe a single trade, and very rarely did he do everybody all together. But he would bring in, 2 people working in the same area, talk through what they needed to do, go to the next guy and the next guy and the next guy, and just had everything lined out, and had it all on a whiteboard, all on a erase board, written down. And everybody knew where everybody was, but he had individually talked to each one of them, manpower, quality, cleanup, whatever the issue was, progress, complete, next trade, all the way down the line. It was probably one of the most, again, it was a lot of work for him, right? It's still probably one of the best run projects that I've been part of.
I love that idea of having smaller huddles, right? Because I've been in subcontractor meetings where it's every subcontractor, and if I'm a mechanical and plumbing subcontractor, I don't really care what they're doing on the concrete out there on the outside doing the sidewalks, right? But when they bring everybody in, you got to go through it all, and the sidewalk guy and landscape guy doesn't care about the electrician being late on his stuff. So having those little, as they work together, maybe all the MEPs together, and then the exterior guys together, and how they interface together. I like that idea.
Right, but the electrician's involved in all those
areas. They are.
Hey, somebody's got to keep everybody else in line and on schedule. Usually it's us.
Correct.
So before we wrap up here, is there any, if you were to give a few points, 3 or 4 maybe points to really, because this whole podcast is really about kind of giving back to the next generation.
Right.
And so with the, we haven't really talked a lot about subcontractors as much. So, and that's a whole nother ball game that doesn't really apply, to owners, reps, and all this sort of stuff. But if you could give 3 or 4 really good, tangible points maybe for kind of the next generation of subcontractors, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say that, because they have, the subcontractor has learned the trade. That's usually, rarely are you going to find a subcontractor that's not come up through the field and learned the trade, whether it's electrician, HVAC guy, drywall guy, so on and so forth. So learn the trade, but also work on your own self-awareness, on your own communication skills. Those soft skills. Don't just kind of get you a game plan on where you want to be when your back gets tired and your knees are hurting from being down on the concrete putting flooring down. Kind of get you a game plan on what you want your career to look like, and then build on that. Because I think a lot of our trades are still what I've seen with a lot of the young guys that start out. They don't have a vision of where they can go in their industry. And now the wages have really, really done a lot better. You can build a career, you can build success and get that vision early so that you can build on having a future in it. I joke with young guys all the time and say, look, if you'll pass a drug test and show up every day, one day you'll look around and you'll realize you're in charge. Just by default. So
that's funny.
Yeah, but have a vision, for where you can go with.
I found that with everything I've done. It's just consistency compounds so fast.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is just showing up or just trying to do a little bit better every day. You can get a long ways real fast. Yeah,
you can. Really can.
Well, and I find the vision part's really important for me. It helps keep me motivated, keeps me excited. And I mean, there's stuff that we all have to do in our jobs that's not exciting, that it's kind of boring and maybe we're not interested in, but having the vision can really get you through those periods. That roller coaster of stuff that's just dragging on you. It's sucking all the energy out of you, get you through to the end of the day. So hopefully tomorrow's a little more fun and exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, John, before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add or anything you think you need to let the people know that we haven't talked about?
I appreciate you guys having me. I mean, I would, obviously give the big punchline, go to the website, give me a call, do all that good stuff. But, that goes without saying. I really want the industry's been so good to me. And I've made, just not only, financially, I've done well with it, but the relationships that I've built over the years have just been, really, really transformative. For lack of a better term, there's been people that's influenced and invested in me. And I think as all of us kind of, again, I'm going to be 62. I'm still got another 20 plus years good to go, I think. So, and I want those, I really want to see this next generation, because this generation gets such a bad rap. I think, and I know the young folks that work for me, I said, no, back up. These are some quality people And so I think we just need to continue to promote that and help lift them up.
Cool, man. So, John, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they find you?
You can find me at empoweringsubcontractors.com. You can check out there, or you can find me on LinkedIn as well, and instant message me from that. And be happy to talk to anybody about any of the stuff we talked about.
Cool, man. I appreciate you joining us, John. Anything else, Kyle?
Yeah, no, I just want to kind of reiterate John's last point there, and there are some studies done about how managers and upper level support their teams, and I forget exactly what it was, but it was something along the lines that if you kind of set somebody up for success, they have a much higher chance of succeeding. And you can almost kind of fool somebody into being successful. Fool's the wrong word, but you guys know where I'm going with this. And so I think it's offering that support. It's having that culture. If we go full circle back to the very beginning here, it's that culture of the company that can really help drive that, and especially next generations too. Set them up for success, and guess what? They will be successful. It's just a different world, and it's going to continue to change. So,
Right.
It's changing fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, love to have you on, John. It was so much fun.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
I'll see
guys.
you soon.
All right. Appreciate it, guys.